everybody, it's Professor Macaulay,
Professor Vertigas,
and
Igor, and tonight we are talking about Dracula. One of our favorite horror characters. Ghoul, is he your favorite?
Yes.
How about you, Igor?
I think differently.
Yeah?
I think the Wolfman is cooler. I mean, you got bitten by a werewolf. When there's a full moon, he's a Wolfman.
Well, that is pretty cool.
And he kind of has super strength.
Well, so does Dracula.
You are correct.
You know, the debate between werewolves and vampires has been going on for a long time. The whole Underworld series has vampires versus werewolves. We might have to check and see if you're ready to watch that. But tonight we're talking about Dracula. So obviously there's a long literary history of vampires in English literature, and then from a folklore perspective, so many cultures have aspects of the undead or vampires, Eastern Europe providing most of the lore that we're familiar with. But to get to Dracula and what we're going to talk about today, we have to go back to the 1897 novel written by
Bram Stoker.
Bram Stoker. So, you know, the novel... What's that?
I said that.
Oh, I'm sorry, Igor. So, the novel itself is so different from what most of us are familiar with Dracula. The most faithful representation on film being Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. But very interesting read. Kind of a boring read for most modern readers. One thing that we just recently discovered is this graphic novel.
It isn't quite a graphic novel. I mean, it's a comic.
Well, a comic is a graphic novel in its own way. But this illustrated version of Dracula is very, very cool. It keeps true to the story of the novel. The Ghoul started reading this today. What are your impressions on it, Ghoul?
On a scale of 1 to 10, definitely 10.
Yeah?
Well, 9.
9? I, for one, am so happy that there's access for young horror fans to have the true story going on here. I should say the story of the novel, not necessarily the true story of Dracula. But great to see something like that out there, and I'm really glad that you're enjoying it, Ghoul.
Me too.
So when we talk about movies, now we're getting into a convoluted history. Ghoul, pop quiz. What was the first Dracula movie?
No, actually.
There you go. A lot of people don't know. Answers can range from Dracula, made in 1931 by Universal Pictures, but really, the first Dracula movie is 1922's... No, it's not Dracula. No, it's...
Nosferatu!
Nosferatu! Made by German expressionist F.W. Murnau and starring... Max Schreck as Count Orlok. So many incredible visuals in this silent black and white film. Count Orlok is truly terrifying, but the film, for many modern viewers, is kind of boring. Silent films are always tricky for young viewers, especially. Black and white can go one way or the other, and Orlok himself is terrifying, even from a modern viewpoint. So, kind of a tricky one to introduce young people to, but one that is definitely worth watching. To get to the first modern Dracula that many people are familiar with, we have to go to Universal Studios in 1931, and their version of Dracula starring...
Bela Lugosi!
Now, Ghoul, who is the best person to ever play Dracula?
Bela Lugosi. He cannot be beat!
So, obviously the Ghoul has some pretty strong feelings about Lugosi in this role, and it's hard to argue with him. Lugosi establishes so much of what we view as what Dracula is. The tuxedo, the thick accent, the mannerisms. It's an incredible performance in an otherwise pretty boring movie. We watched it again recently. We watched it a long time ago together. I've been watching that version of Dracula since I was a youngster when a good friend, Doc Dredd, first introduced me to it. But, you know, when you rewatch it, it's a pretty slow movie and a quiet movie. But anytime Lugosi is on screen, he's just magnetic and wonderful. A great film solely on his performance. So a lot of people don't understand, though, with Lugosi. How many times did Bela Lugosi actually play Dracula?
Twice.
Twice. Once in Dracula, and what was the other time?
Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein for some reason. I think he shouldn't be in there.
Yeah?
Because it's a Frankenstein movie. Plus, the Wolfman's in there. My favorite.
Igor's favorite. It might have
I
been.
think it's crazy.
Might have been better off calling it Abbott and Costello Meet the Universal Monsters.
Well, there's only 3.
Well, 3 of the Universal Monsters. But do we love that movie?
Yes.
We love Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. It is such a great film, an absolutely wonderful way to introduce young viewers to the classic Universal monsters. And Lugosi just does a great turn as Dracula, and he maintains his dignity while still being humorous. One of our favorite films. Now, that came out in 1948, 17 years after the original turn as Dracula. But to get to our next Dracula that we're going to talk about, we got to fast forward to 1958. Hammer Horror starts reproducing all of the Universal classics. They started off with Frankenstein. They end up doing it with The Mummy. But in between comes 1958's Horror of Dracula, starring not Bruce Lee, not Stan Lee, but
Christopher Lee.
Christopher Lee. You gotta quit picking on my thumb. Christopher Lee. I love this movie. We watched this again recently too. Ghoul was not as big a fan of it. Who's better, Christopher Lee or Bela Lugosi?
Bela Lugosi.
And I get it. I love Bela Lugosi to death. But man, Christopher Lee is awesome. If you have a slightly older viewer who can take some genuine scenes of horror and some nice, rich Technicolor blood, Horror of Dracula is a great counterpiece to the 1931 classic. I enjoy it quite a bit. Now, we got to fast forward again, though. You know, we're in 1958. We're going to fast forward. Ready?
I'm just gonna shake my head.
To 1979. To Dracula. British production, starring Sir Laurence Olivier as Van Helsing and as Dracula,
Frank Langella.
Frank Langella, coming off a turn of playing Dracula in a renewed stage play version where he made women swoon. And the professor has to admit, he is a handsome man. He is a handsome Dracula. I mean, he is, all right? And an incredible actor. I love Frank Langella as an actor. But this is a pretty boring movie, okay? High on the romance, low on the horror, but if you like that gothic vampire feel, it might be for you. So we're gonna just kind of gloss over it, but you can't talk about Dracula and not talk about Frank Langella. I feel like you got shorter. Why don't you come back up on my level? All right, so from 1979, we're gonna fast forward again. Ready?
I'm just gonna shake my head.
All right, you sit your head right there. Ready? Fast forward. 1987. Possibly the greatest comedy, horror, family, adventure movie ever made. One of the first horror films that the Ghoul and I watched together. Starring Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, the Gillman creature, because they can't call him the creature from the Black Lagoon. 1987's absolute classic.
Monster Squad!
Monster Squad! Man, we love this movie. Take Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, throw in the Universal House of Dracula, House of Frankenstein monster mashups.
Goonies!
Throw in the Goonies and make a movie. And then you have the Monster Squad. Come back in the frame there, kiddo, and pop up a little bit. This movie is so much fun. A great horror comedy that's just right for those kids who are a little too old for some of the childish stuff, but not quite ready for proper horror. So, giving us a turn as Dracula in this movie is not Dunkin' Donuts, but
Duncan Regger.
Duncan Regger. Not really well known in horror circles, but he gives a good performance as Dracula. How do you feel? How does he stack up? Is he better than Lugosi?
1% lower.
1% lower, so almost on par with Bela Lugosi. Duncan Rager. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments about that. So, great film though, and he does give a pretty scary turn as Dracula. I will say, I think he does fine for what the film is asking of him. So, scooch in a little bit here, Ghoul. Back up a little bit. You're kind of falling out of the camera there, man.
Okay.
Alright. Alright, so our final Dracula discussion. We're not even getting up to the 2000s. From 1987, we're only going to fast forward 3 years to 1990. A very little known production. A Canadian television series starring a blonde Dracula.
Well, he's not the only blonde vampire.
But blonde vampires? What other blonde vampire is there?
David from the Lost Boys?
I stand corrected. David from the Lost Boys, a darn fine vampire in his own right. But in 1990, a Canadian television series first appeared on syndication in America called Dracula the Series. Not known among many people, it has the best opening theme of any horror game or horror show ever. Should we do it together? On 3. 1, 2, 3. Dracula. Man, this show is so much fun for anybody who is a horror fan, okay? You have 2 kids who go to live in Transylvania with their uncle Gustav Van Helsing, and they live in the shadow of Lucard Industries, run by Alexander Lucard. Take Alucard and flip it over, and what do you get?
Dracula!
Dracula! And in this case, Dracula is played by who?
Geordie Johnson.
Geordie Johnson.
I wish I could say more names.
Oh, we want you to say his name. Dracula is played by
Geordie Johnson.
Thank you, Igor. So, he gives a great, hilarious turn as Dracula. This show is played for laughs for the most part, but there is some scenes of drama, a few intense scenes. But the thing that I really love about this, one is, Ghoul loves it. He's been watching it for a couple of years now. I love it because there's a lot of little nods to other horror films and vampire lore. There's a German vampire that Dracula has a feud with, and his name is Nosferatu. There's a vampire doctor who helps Dracula when he gets tainted blood, and his name is Varney, the vampire doctor, based on the Varney the vampire character from the old Penny Dreadfuls. It's a fun show for the kids, some nods to the true horror fans. It's not easy to find. I got my version of it on DVD back in the early 2000s. It's largely out of print, but there is a YouTube channel that has almost every episode. If you check out the description, I'm going to put a link to it in there so that everybody can take a look at it. So, that's our views on some of the cinematic history of Dracula. An incredible character, spreads vampire lore to everybody, and such an easy way to understand. Ghoul, how do you kill a vampire?
Number 1, garlic. Number 2, a crush. Number 3, stake to the heart. Number 4, sunlight.
Sunlight.
4 ways.
Well,
That's crazy.
that is crazy. And it's an amazing,
Garlic doesn't really count.
not usually as a killer.
It hurts them.
It's amazing how the movies have added so much to vampire lore. Because when you look at Sunlight, that first appeared in Nosferatu. It's not in traditional legend. And in Stoker's original novel, Sunlight, Dracula can walk around during the day. He just doesn't have any power. Yeah. Who'd have thunk it? The cross has always been something that's been viewed as protection against him. Garlic, obviously, an old wives' tale, part of the folklore. And the stake through the heart, which is also not required in Stoker's novel, though it does play a part, usually followed by beheading. So, we hope you've enjoyed this little discussion we've had about Dracula today. We hope that you go out and you check out some of the different versions of Dracula out there. Such a great character, so many contributions to horror in general. Igor, do you think that people should maybe leave us some of their thoughts in the comments about who their favorite actor and favorite Dracula movie is?
Yes.
We would love to hear your thoughts on that. Give us a like, share us with your friends, tell some folks about us. Yes, Igor?
Well, I'm going to be starting my own YouTube channel.
Oh, you are Igor. All right, that's news to me. Click subscribe if you want to see when our next video is coming out. We should have a new one coming out soon. And before we finish up, I think we have a joke today. Are you ready for the joke?
Yes!
Who should I ask it to? Should I ask it to Igor or should I ask it to you?
Igor's tired, so he's gonna leave. Woohoo!
Oh, there, Igor. All right, Ghoul. You ready for this one?
Yes!
Okay. Why did Dracula's doctor tell him to stop eating meat?
I don't know.
Because he couldn't take any more steaks to his heart.
Really?
All right. Well, hey, folks, stay safe, be good people, don't be a monster, like and subscribe, and we'll see you in our next video. Take care, everybody.
Bye!